I moved into Willow Creek because it looked like peace. Fresh paint on every mailbox. Kids riding bikes. White fences that all matched, like a postcard that never aged. I thought I'd finally found stillness after the chaos of my divorce. Day after I moved in, I was still unpacking kitchen boxes when I heard a knock. A woman in a pastel sweater stood on my porch, holding a clipboard like it was a weapon. "Hi there," she said with a tight smile. "Carol Monroe. I'm the HOA president. Just wanted to welcome you officially." I wiped my hands on my jeans. "Nice to meet you." She cut me off. "We noticed your lawn is about 1.5 inches over regulation. We have a 2.5-inch maximum height. It's in the welcome packet." I blinked. "I just got here yesterday," she nodded. "Exactly. We encourage new homeowners to read the guidelines immediately. It's how we keep Willow Creek beautiful." I forced a smile. "Right. Sure. I'll mow it tonight." "Great," she said, handing me a paper. "Just a warning this time. Do know repeated violations carry fines." She walked off without waiting for a response. I stood there holding the paper. It wasn't a friendly flyer. It was an official violation notice. Grass height non-compliant. I laughed out loud. It felt like a joke, but it wasn't. That evening, I pulled out the mower from the garage and cut every blade of grass like it owed me money. Halfway through, Pete, the guy 2 doors down, waved from his driveway. "You're doing great," he called. "Don't let Carol get to you." I raised an eyebrow. "Is she always like that?" Pete hesitated. "Let's just say, likes order. And she doesn't like different." I didn't know what that meant yet, but I'd learned the next morning another notice. This one said mailbox paint slightly chipped violation. I stared at it. My mailbox was gray. It looked fine. I walked the block. Every other mailbox had minor chip smudges, even rust. Mine wasn't special, but I was new. And alone. I didn't have family visiting. No kids playing out front. Just me trying to start over. And they saw that by the end of the first week, I had 4 notices. 1 for leaving the trash bin out. 5 minutes too long. 1 for not edging the driveway. 1 for a porch light that was too bright. It wasn't about the rules. It was about power. And Carol had a taste for it that night. I sat in my dark living room and stared at the stack of violations. I'd followed every rule I knew. They kept coming. I should have walked away then. Sold the place. Left, but I didn't. I stayed, and I didn't know it yet. But I was about to become their biggest problem. I still remember the day my dad raised the flag in our old yard. Every Sunday morning, like clockwork, he'd pull the rope, and that red, white, and blue would rise with the sun. It was his ritual, his pride. After he died, the flagpole was one of the only things I took from the house, so when I planted it in my new front lawn, it wasn't about patriotism. It was about holding on to something that still felt like home. By Monday morning, I found the letter. Unauthorized structure in visible front yard area, in violation of Section 8.2, exterior modifications, a $500 fine. Immediate removal required. I walked out, still barefoot, and stared at the flag. It wasn't even tall, maybe 6 feet. Sturdy, clean, the kind of thing that would have made my dad smile. Instead, I felt someone watching. There she was. Carol. She was standing across the street, arms folded like a principal who just caught a student smoking. "You've got to be kidding." "Me," I said, walking over with the letter in hand. "This." "Really?" She didn't flinch. "Flagpoles require prior approval from the architectural committee. It's a personal item. It's not even permanent. It's a tribute to my father." "Rules are rules," she said, eyes cold. "And you didn't submit the proper form. You never even gave me the form. You've had the welcome packet for 2 weeks. It's on page 14. I clenched my jaw. "You understand this isn't just a decoration, right? It means something to me." Carol tilted her head slightly, fake sympathy leaking through. "We all have memories, but in Willow Creek, we prioritize consistency. Otherwise, the whole neighborhood slips." I laughed bitterly. "Yeah, can't have grief messing with your symmetry." "Watch your tone," she said. "This is your 2nd violation. The board won't be as lenient going forward." Turned on her heel and walked away. I stood there, holding a letter that said my father's memory was unauthorized. That night, I didn't take the pole down. I sat on the porch with Max, my dog, watching it sway in the breeze. The next morning, it was gone. Just gone. No note, no knock. Just a fresh patch of dug-up earth where the flag used to be. I knocked. On Pete's door, he opened, saw my face, and sighed. "They took it, didn't they?" he asked. "Who?" "The maintenance subcommittee. They're just Carol's cousins in polos. They sneak out at night, take what she tells them to. That's theft. Technically, they call it enforcement." I walked home and stared at the hole in the ground. It wasn't about the flag. It was about control. They weren't just enforcing rules. They were erasing who I was, one memory at a time. And I was just starting to understand how far they'd go. At first I thought I was imagining it. Now they're fine, this one for noise disturbance. I live alone. I don't throw parties. I barely play music. The violation claimed loud bass sounds were heard after 10 p.m. on a Monday. I was asleep by 9:30. The next day, a notice for trash bins left in public view beyond scheduled pickup. I'd rolled them back at noon. The paper said they were spotted out at 6:04 p.m. Something felt off. Then came the kicker. Pet nuisance. Excessive barking. I don't even own a barking dog. Max is a rescue, quiet, anxious, barely makes a sound unless he hears thunder. He hadn't barked once that week. I walked straight to the HOA office at the community center. Carol wasn't there, but her assistant handed me copies of the complaint. Logs. Anonymous sources. No proof, just verified by committee observation. I laughed. "So, you mean Carol's friends said it happened, and that's enough?" The assistant shrugged. "All complaints are taken seriously." I looked around. Cameras I hadn't noticed before. But there were little black domes mounted under the eaves of the center. Watching. Always watching. I walked out, heart pounding harder than it should have. Not from fear, from anger. From that awful, crawling sense that I was being watched in my own home, in my own life. That night, I saw Pete watering his lawn. I walked over. I asked, lowering my voice, "Someone's lying in those reports, right? You ever get fake complaints?" He looked at his feet. "You should let it go? Let it go? They're making stuff up? I'm being fined for things that didn't happen." He leaned closer. "Carol doesn't like resistance. She has eyes everywhere, even on the board." I narrowed my eyes. "Why does she care so much about me?" He hesitated. "She says you don't fit. You don't join events. You don't blend in. She thinks you're trying to change things. I mow my lawn. I fix my fence. I pay my dues. That's not enough here. You have to play their game." I walked away before I said something I'd regret. The next day, 3 more complaints. One about dead grass patches, one about improper curtain color visible from the street, and one accusing me of parking facing the wrong direction. My car was parked in my own driveway.
This
Wasn't about violations. This was war. It wanted me to feel crazy. Like I was the problem. Like I didn't belong. And slowly, I was starting to believe it. I sat on my porch that night, Max at my feet, and I stared at every house around me. Windows glowing, curtains drawn, perfect lawns. No sound, no faces. It felt like everyone had disappeared, or worse. They were watching from behind those curtains, waiting for the next strike. My mom died 3 years ago. We didn't have much, but we had her garden. She used to say roses remembered things. Sunlight, kindness, grief. When she passed, I took clippings from her favorite bush and planted them wherever I lived. Here. In Willow Creek, I picked the corner by the porch. Soft soil. Morning sun. I nurtured them like memories. They were blooming for the first time. Bright, full pinks, just like hers. I got home from work and froze. The garden bed was gone. Not just trimmed, not just moved, gone. Torn up by the roots, soil overturned, sprinkler heads exposed, and a white plastic HOA sign stuck in the middle like a gravestone. Unapproved landscaping. Removed per code 10.3. I dropped my keys and ran to the dirt. Leaves still clung to broken stems. One rosebud sat alone in the mess, like it hadn't. Realized the others were dead yet. I couldn't breathe. I didn't cry. I just sat there in silence, covered in soil, trying to understand what kind of people do this without warning. Pete walked by. He stopped when he saw me kneeling there. "Oh no," he muttered. "They didn't even tell you?" I looked up. "Who did this?" He looked around before crouching beside me. "Carol sent the maintenance team. Said it disrupted uniform. Lawn visibility, they were roses," I said. "They were from my mother's funeral." Pete swallowed hard. "I know. I'm sorry. Was there a vote?" "No. Carol doesn't always need one. She says small changes fall under executive discretion." I stared at him. "She destroyed my mom's flowers because they didn't match a blueprint." He didn't answer. I didn't sleep that night. I stared at the hole in the ground, like a wound that wouldn't close. And in that silence, not loudly, not dramatically, just a quiet shift, I realized this wasn't about me anymore. It wasn't even about the rules, it was about erasing anything real. They wanted this street to look perfect on paper. Listings, and people like me, people with scars and roots and history, didn't fit their design. They didn't want memories. They wanted control, and they were getting bolder. I stood at the window around 2 a.m., watching the streetlights buzz somewhere. Carol was probably asleep in her pristine house, with her neatly trimmed lawn and her HOA handbook on the nightstand. But I wasn't going to sleep anymore. Not until I made them feel even a piece of what they'd made me feel after the garden. I bought the camera, not a fancy security system, just a simple ring cam pointed at my porch. I installed it quietly. No wires showing, no notices to the HOA. If they could spy on me, I could record back. For days, nothing. Then one night, at 2:43 a.m., the motion alert pinged my phone. I opened the app, half asleep, and there she was, Carol standing. On my porch, in her robe and slippers, holding a flashlight. Not police, not emergency, just her, slowly walking from one side of the porch to the other, inspecting my planters. Bending to peek at my windows like I was a storefront she was checking for violations, my heart slammed. Against my ribs, she looked right into the doorbell cam and didn't even flinch. Jez walked away into the dark, flashlight bouncing as she went back down the sidewalk. No notice followed. No, letter no find. Just silence. I didn't sleep the rest of the night. The next morning I posted the footage, no captions, it's just raw video. I uploaded it to Nextdoor, Facebook, and a local HOA watchdog group by noon. The comments exploded. "Why is your HOA president creeping around like a burglar? That's illegal. Call the cops. I'd be filing charges today." By 3 p.m., the video had been shared hundreds of times. A local TikTok page picked it up. People started calling her Creepy Carol, but the board, it doubled down a notice showed up that evening, taped to my door. Unauthorized surveillance devices, visible from public walkways, removed within 24 hours. I laughed so hard I nearly choked. So now, I was the problem. Pete texted me. She's fuming. "Don't be alone if you can help it," I wrote back. "I've been alone since day one." That night, I walked up and down the street. Porch lights flicked off as I passed. Curtains twitched. Nobody waved anymore. The same people who smiled when I moved in now avoided eye contact like I was contagious. Like calling out the queen maid. Me dangerous. I wasn't just being harassed now. I was being erased. Publicly. But something changed when that video hit the internet. For the first time, people saw her. Not just the perfect lawn lady with the HOA binder, but the controlling shadow. Sneaking across porches in the night, and once you see that, you can't unsee it. Max was the only reason I hadn't lost my mind. He wasn't just a dog, he was my shadow, my silence. My only constant in that neighborhood full of whispers and fake smiles. After the garden was ripped out, he wouldn't leave my side. Every night he curled next to me on the couch like he knew something wasn't right. Then one morning he was gone. I woke up to an open gate and an empty yard. No barking, no paw prints. Just silence. I ran up and down the street calling his name. Until my throat cracked. Max never wandered. Didn't even like going down the steps without me. I checked the cameras. The ring cam had caught it. A white HOA marked truck pulling up quietly just before 6 a.m. A man with gloves. A leash. Max barking once, confused. Then nothing. I drove straight to the HOA office, heart thundering in my chest. Carol was there. I slammed the printout of the video on her desk. Where's my dog? She didn't blink. Animal control was contacted after multiple neighbors reported a dangerous animal on your property. He's 10 years old and terrified of leaves. You know he's not dangerous. He wasn't registered with the HOA. That's a violation under Pet Policy Section 3. You stole him. We enforce the rules. I stared at her. You don't even care, do you? She tapped her pen calmly. Your behavior lately has made several residents uncomfortable. The board acted accordingly. You had no right. Disputes can be filed at our monthly meeting. If you'd like to be added to the agenda, submit a request. I turned and walked out before I broke something. Animal control gave me an address, a holding center 2 towns over. Max was in a cage, shivering eyes red from crying, tail tucked. Covered in sawdust and fear, the moment he saw me, he whimpered. That soft, broken sound cut deeper than any fine, any letter, any threat Carol ever made. The woman at the desk asked if I wanted to report the seizure. I stared at Max and I said, "Not yet." I took him home, sat on the floor with him for hours. He didn't sleep that night. Neither did I. Because this wasn't just about property lines anymore. They went after the one thing I loved. They wanted me gone, and they were willing to break anything. To make that happen, that night, I made a promise not to fight back out of anger, but to make sure they never did this to anyone else again. And I was done playing quiet. Pete knocked on my door around 9:30 p.m. He'd never done that before. Never walked up in plain sight. Usually it was a passing word at the curb, a whisper, over the hedge, but tonight, came to the door with a worn manila folder under his arm. "We need to talk," he said. I let him in. Max growled low, not at Pete, but at the smell of the street still clinging to his jacket. Pete sat at my kitchen table like he'd done this 100 times before. He didn't touch his coffee, just opened the folder and spread the papers out like puzzle pieces. These are internal HOA records. Meeting minutes, complaint logs, violation templates. Most of them never get shown to residents. I stared down at the papers. Dozens of printed reports. Most of them stamped with names I'd never seen and signatures that looked suspiciously identical. Pete tapped one. "This fine? You didn't get it from a neighbor?" It was filled out before the date it happened. I blinked. "You're saying they're pre-writing violations?" He nodded. Carol's been doing it for years. She's got a little group on the board, all her people. They vote in private, forge neighbor complaints, pad the fines. Sometimes they collect, sometimes they don't. Depends who they like. And the garden. The dog. He slid over a memo labeled Priority Enforcement List. My name was at the top. "I tried to object when they targeted you," Pete said, voice low. "But I'm not on the board. I just help with maintenance." I kept quiet, until I saw what they did to Max. I leaned back in my chair, stunned. "Why are you giving me this?" He looked me dead in the eyes. "'Cause I've lived here. 22 years, and I've watched good people leave in tears. They isolate you, break you, then sell your house to someone who'll fit the vision." I swallowed. "And you? I have a mortgage to pay. A sick wife." I kept my head down, but I can't anymore. I gathered the papers slowly. My fingers shook, not from fear, from relief. I finally had proof. The notes, the forged complaints. The manipulation, all the things I felt were happening, couldn't prove. Now I could. And I wasn't going to another board meeting to file a dispute. I was going to court. I didn't tell Carol I filed the lawsuit. I let the papers speak for themselves. My lawyer served the HOA with a full civil complaint, harassment, unlawful fines, illegal property entry, forged documents, and emotional distress. Every piece of evidence Pete gave me was now part of the public record. 2 days later, a news van parked outside my house. Channel 7. I hadn't called them. Someone else did. The reporter's name was Marissa. She held up her mic like a weapon and said, "Are you the homeowner being targeted by Willow Creek's HOA?"
Nice.
I looked at Max, who sat quietly by my feet, and nodded. "Yeah, that's me." The segment aired that night. Footage of Carol creeping on my porch at 2:43 a.m., clips of the garden before and after, screenshots of the complaint forms, all with the same forged signature. Even a few anonymous neighbors chiming in, "She'll find me for my wind chimes." They made my son take down his chalk drawings. We were too scared to say anything. Headline: HOA or harassment. Willow Creek residents speak out. It spread fast by the next morning. The HOA office was closed. Board members stopped responding to emails. Carol released a one-line statement through her attorney. All actions taken were within the scope of HOA guidelines. But no one bought it anymore. The tide had turned. People started coming out of their houses again, not to wave, but to talk, to ask questions, share their own stories. Turns out I wasn't the only one with a file. Carol had been running a quiet regime for over a decade, targeting divorced homeowners, immigrants, renters, anyone not part of the vision. And now it was her name trending online, her face on TikTok, her email inbox flooded with hate mail and legal threats. Within a week, the judge ordered a temporary freeze on all HOA collections and suspended the board's authority pending investigation. Carol resigned quietly the next day. No farewell, no speech, just a sign taped to the clubhouse door. Board activities paused until further notice. Pete showed up that night with a six-pack and a crooked smile. "You did it." I shook my head. "No, we did." We sat on my porch as Max snored between us, and for the first time since I moved in, the street felt quiet in a good way. Not like silence before a storm, but like something toxic had finally been cleared from the air, and justice. Real justice had finally gotten its hands dirty. I didn't move. People told me I should. "You'll always be that guy who sued the HOA. They'll never look at you the same. Wouldn't it be easier to start fresh?" But fresh starts don't grow roots. So I stayed, and I planted new ones. The hole where Mom's roses had. Then I filled it with wildflowers. No symmetry, no perfect rose, just color, chaos, and life. The fine letters stopped coming. The mailbox stayed full of actual mail for once, not threats. Max lounged on the porch again like he owned it. He didn't flinch when neighbors walked by anymore, and me. I found something in the aftermath that I didn't expect. Respect, not from everyone. Some still avoided eye contact, unsure which side of history they'd landed on, but others nodded, waved. One woman even dropped off cookies. Said, "I'm sorry I didn't speak up sooner." Pete helped me hang the new sign. It wasn't flashy, just white wood painted by hand. "No HOA bullies welcome." Simple, honest. I nailed it right under the mailbox, the same one Carol had once threatened to fine for being chipped. Now it stood untouched. Like even the mailbox knew I'd earned peace the hard way. The neighborhood changed after that, not overnight, but enough. The board was restructured. New people ran, younger, more diverse. Open meetings. Real voting. And every time someone brought up another stupid rule, flagpole heights, curtain colors, angles, someone would cough and mutter, "Remember what happened to Carol?" That was enough. One evening, Pete walked over with a small pot in his hands. "I thought you might want this," said it was a rose cutting. Not my mom's. His wife's. Figured it was time the street remembered something soft. Took it. My voice caught in my throat, so I just nodded. We planted it together. Not because it matched the landscaping, but because it mattered. I used to think survival meant silence, but now I know. Sometimes it means raising your voice until someone listens, even if your voice shakes, even if you stand alone on your porch at midnight, filming the monster with a Ring camera. Justice didn't knock politely. It kicked the door in, and now I sit on this porch with Max, with flowers blooming wildly beside me, and I smile when strangers slow down to read the sign. They don't always understand the story, but they feel it, and that's enough.